I'll rattle through this quite quickly. Access to art. This is a project called Demos, based in Paris, in France. It's a fantastic music education project, one of the best of its kind. Youngsters, mostly, as you can see from the banlieue, from disadvantaged backgrounds, get to make music together twice a week, and every fortnight they come together to work with an orchestra. They are learning classical music, and it is very firmly classical music. They are being introduced to classical music. Actually, in this case, I think it's quite a political thing to do. These are youngsters who are growing up in a culture where classical music is important, and if you want to have a place in a society like France, it's an advantage to be familiar with and have an appreciation of classical music. But this is essentially about access to art. Here is a project which is very strongly about social change. Geese Theatre, based in Birmingham in the UK, they work only in prisons. And their work, in order to get into a British prison, there's no point in talking to the administration about how artistically interesting it will be for people to be involved in this. They want to know what the effect you're going to have on the chances of these people not committing criminal offences in future, because that's what's going to affect their performance indicators and so on. So Geese Theatre are very strongly focused on that, and their work is excellent in many ways, but it is driven by a need to demonstrate that there is social change in their work. It's going back to my idea of the Parliament of Dreams. It's about saying, can you represent yourself in the cultural life of the society that you're part of? There are lots of people who can't. People who are described in our cultural life by others. In Britain, I would say young people. I would say people with mental health problems. I would say travellers. I would say often disabled people. They are represented in the media, they are represented in television, they are represented in our culture, in our arts, mostly by other people, rather than being able to say, this is me, this is my life. And we might come back to this when I'll talk about the Milk Project at the end. Now, I'm just going to stop this, and I want to show you a 2-minute video, which is this Migränland, because rather than me talk about it, it's much better if I show you the video. Now, Migränland is a project that was done in Spain 2 years ago as part of a major theatre festival, and it was directed by Alex Rigola, and it involved 14 not just migrants, but illegal migrants.
Si pudieras volver a escoger, ¿hubieras venido? Per subsistir, han de ser invisibles, han de passar desapercebuts.
Tenim la sort de poder sortir als escenaris i poder cantar el que volem dir. La nostra veu és la nostra força.
Havíem de partir del que ells ens poguessin donar.
Vam passar 3 dies amb tormentes allà a mar. Entre nosaltres sabíem que qualsevol cosa que passi, passem tots futurs.
Són vides que tenim molt a prop nostres i que amb prou feines ens adonem el que comporta ser un immigrant sense papers a casa nostra.
kon pour man lii ñu def nii lu baax te gis naa ne yu mel nii moom bi nga xam ne yu mel nii nga xam ne dañuy dem maanaam nga xam ne lépp naturel la amul triche.
Bona nit tothom i benvinguts a Migränland.
abastat per tots els espectadors que hem vingut. Se'n van d'aquí amb uns coneixements que la majoria no tenien i que, per tant, veuran les coses d'una altra manera per mirar.
I won't say much more about that, but just to finish this idea, what I think these three objectives do is they create territory, a space. No project is ever trying to do just one, and in fact projects may shift within this triangular space from time to time. They may shift during their development. An individual artist may make different choices as they go on. This is where I might place some of the projects that I've been talking about to you tonight in relation to these three objectives, in terms of how close they are to one or other of them. Urban dig, which is on the outside, I'll talk about very briefly in a moment, is interesting because it's moved right into the middle. It's a Greek project based in Athens, and as a result of the crisis, it has transformed itself from a project that was not meaningfully participative into one where participation is the centre of what it's doing. And Feaster Gates I would put outside of this. Now, I'm just going to leave you with 4 questions about the future, of things that, or not questions, but things to think about, that I'm thinking about myself. The first is how technology is changing this practice in very fundamental ways. I think mostly so far we have not done very much, and that's mostly because the people who are inevitably leading in this field up to now are the people who are catching up with new technology. I'm really excited to see what the digital natives will do with the new technology in the years to come. This is a music group, and there isn't a traditional music instrument in the room, as you can see. We are living in a globalizing world. In Place of War is a fantastic project that is connecting people, young artists of all kinds, hip-hop artists, fashion artists, musicians, dancers, visual artists, graffiti artists from Brazil, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the UK and Zimbabwe, from conflict zones, and they have just no expectations that I'm familiar with from a context of community arts, but they are able to work in this globalizing world and connect people and move people. There are dangers to that, but I think there are also some really important things. This is Urban Dig. This is a project where an organization which used to be doing kind of interesting, vaguely publicly oriented projects around the urban fabric of Athens with money from the municipality and other places. When the crisis came, the money dried up. They've completely rethought their work, and they are now, the map they're holding up is treating a part of Athens as an island, and where many migrant people are living. They're hugely energized and transformed by the way they have discovered. They have no money. And the reason I say this is a question about changing policy is I was really struck in Greece by the mistrust between artists and ordinary people and the government or the local government, because they feel they have been failed. So is there a point in talking about trying to change policy if you don't trust your government? What is happening there? And finally, new ideas in art. For me, I'm still thinking a lot about the Milk Project. It's fantastic. I'm so grateful to the family for having welcomed me to their house and given me lunch and talked to me about it. I think it's a really, really interesting project. But it is on that place about, I come from a world, my generation, we thought that representation meant that people representing themselves. Now we're having artists saying, no, we can represent you better because we have the skills to tell your stories. And I think it's challenging my ideas and my assumptions about that. And there are lots of other new ideas in art. Art is a changing thing. And if we stick with our ideas and our assumptions about what we think good practice is, we will fail. My final slide, I just want to leave you with this thought, which has been a guiding principle for me since I read it in this well-known book, which many of you have read. To me, it's really important because it shapes the relationship that I want to have with anybody that I work with, which is that what I think is no more important than what they think. What they think is good for them is always better than what I think is good for them. Because trust me, what I think is good for me is better than what any of you think is good for me. And if that works that way, it has to work the other way. And so, as a principle for what we are trying to do when we work with people, that for me is a non-negotiable. Thank you very much.